The Australian Ultimate League is only possible thanks to the generous support of our major partners. Bendigo Private Banking Services. Visit their website bendigoprivate.com.au to help you manage all your personal or business banking needs. Discraft. For leaders in flying discs for over 25 years. Their Ultrastar is the preferred disc of all World Championship events and the Australian Ultimate League. And Zone Ultimate Custom Sports Apparel. Check out their new range of custom warm-up jackets and pants at zoneultimate.com.
Welcome everybody to the first match in round 2 of the Australian Ultimate League. We've got a hot matchup between Perth and Sydney here. Cole Fink in the booth, and I'm joined by recent bronze medalist at the World Under-24 Ultimate Championships, Carolyn Ma. Caro, welcome to the broadcast.
Thanks so much, Cole. I'm really happy to be here. I'm really excited to see this matchup between Perth and Sydney. I think we're in for a cracker, both teams having lost in the first round. Let's have a look at their rosters here. What can you tell us, Cole?
Yeah, well, I can tell you they're both going to be hungry for a win. Both these teams, I'm sure, desperate to be competitive in this league, and having gone down in the first round to Brisbane and Melbourne, respectively, they'll be looking to chalk up a win. Sydney, I think, is the team that has the throwing power. They've got a couple of really big throwers in the likes of Mark Evans and Tom Hewlett, and a lot of downfield ability for catching as well, like Danny Alexander, Deb Lee, a couple of really big skiers. So I think they'll be looking to use throws to get themselves into this game.
Absolutely, and on that flip side, I think Perth will be looking to exploit more of their athletic prowess. We've got athletes in Alex Shepherd and Ellie Murray-Young looking to really dominate that downfield space, as well as Emily Atoni and Rebecca Bergen, who have recently come off a brief hiatus, but who look like they've been playing well in good shape in round 1.
Absolutely. And they've got Ryan Davey across from Newcastle, who's one of the premier handlers in the country, throwing to them. So let's now cross down to Max Halvin, coach of the Perth Power.
And what were the main challenges you guys will face in this game?
Yeah, Sydney's going to be a really tough team. They're one of the most experienced teams in the league. They have a lot of Australian representatives. So I think we're really going to need to push them if we want to unsettle their game.
Are you guys an experienced team, or is that something that you don't quite have?
Yeah, a lot of our players are quite new. I mean, some of them played their first World Club Championship just a few months ago. So that's the kind of thing we're trying to build this weekend, really get people into the elite level of the sport, and we've chosen some amazing athletic people who we think we can do that.
So what are the main strengths of the other team?
Yeah, I mean, they've got great connections. I mean, in terms of they're playing for their club teams, Colony, and also a lot of rogue players. It's going to be really challenging because they're just so used to playing with each other at a really elite level, which a lot of the other teams don't have.
And so is there any real strong players specifically that you want to shut down?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the combination of Danny Alexander and Mike Neal, they're both amazing players and great coaches and everything. So looking at those players and trying to disrupt their flow is going to be really important.
Is there any weaknesses that you think you'd be able to get on top of there?
Yeah, well, we talked about how those, the men and the women have really great connections, but in terms of their mixed style, that's an area we're looking to exploit. So we're hoping that when we start looking at cross-gender connections, that's when we might find some opportunities to get some blocks, to cause some confusion, and to hopefully get the win.
So what's your main strategy for doing that?
Yeah, we're going to be playing a lot of different zones and looks, just try and keep them really unsettled. So we don't want them to get into a comfortable groove. We want them to basically be trying to force options that they wouldn't otherwise choose, or get flustered under pressure, and hopefully that's how we can get away with the win.
Yeah, really try to disrupt their flow there. So is there any key message you'd give to your team ahead of this match?
Yeah, well, it's great. You can put it all out there, right? When you know the other team is good, you can put full energy and effort into disrupting their play, right? They are good. We know that for a fact, but we need to rise to their level if we're going to want to win.
Great, thanks very much. What are the main challenges that you're going to face in this game?
I think Perth will be playing a really dynamic style of offense with the players that they have. So trying to contain that to make sure they don't gain too much speed will be quite key for us. We've got them matched up for height, so I'm pretty confident with that. It's just a matter of getting the angles right and cutting out their speedy players.
So talking about speed, so what are some of the main strengths they have on that team? Is that the biggest worry for you?
I'd say that the top end players are pretty speedy. So we're looking at Ellie Murray-Young, Alex Gann, Alex Shepherd, who will be quite key for them running their offense. So if we can contain them, they'll have to fall to their secondary players, and that's probably where we're going to get a couple of blocks.
So with those strong players, how are you going to shut them down? Do you have any key matchups for them?
Absolutely, we'll have key matchups that will need to be on the ball in that game, and there'll be big marks as well, because those players typically like to shoot for the end zone once they get the disc.
Yeah. Do they have any weaknesses there that you're going to try and kind of get on top of?
The main thing is to make them try and play through their secondary players. Often with teams that are new, when they have to play through their secondary players is when they'll start to cough up the disc a bit more. So make them look off their primary look, and that's where we'll get a couple of easy turns.
Yep. So if you had one main key message to tell your players for this specific game, what would it be?
Guard the unders, make them run deep, because we've got them covered for height, and if you get beaten deep, there'll be help. And if one of the strong shooters gets the disc, feel free to change the marks up to stop whatever they want to throw first.
Yeah, well, thank you very much.
Awesome to hear from the coaches there, who actually just co-coached the Under-24 Blue Bottles team at the World Under-24 Championship. So I think strategically these two teams are going to know each other pretty well as we see the first pool go off, and Jerry Dog gets us underway. As you can see, the weather is pretty atrocious, though, as they say when you're playing in Melbourne, if you don't like the weather, just wait a minute. 4 seasons in a day, this place is famous for.
Absolutely, Cole. And it looks like there's a shot going up here, bit of a contest into the hands of Mark Neild, my apologies. And a shot goes up from Thomas to Carmen, unfortunately a turnover.
So I think we're going to see that shot happening pretty regularly. As you can see, the weather here is pretty severe, and what you can't see is the pretty strong wind going left to right on your screen. So Calaviotis and the Perth Power team having to work it upwind. And I think we'll see when the turns come, as we've got a pick call on the field, I think we'll see that when the turns come, teams will be pretty keen to gain that field position downwind and send up big shots like we saw just come from Henry Thomas.
Absolutely. I think also you'll observe both teams seem to be playing match here, potentially just getting a feel for the conditions, trying to run out around their players, get a few of those connections in the tough weather.
Murray Young getting a lot of the disc here early as we see a shot deep into the wind.
Oh.
Doesn't quite sit.
That's a great bid from Alex Gann, but unfortunately that is a turn and Sydney have regained possession.
Gann is absolutely an athletic beast. I have been watching him develop as a player for a number of years now. He played in Australia's men's beach ultimate team in 2017, and for mine he was absolutely the MVP at that tournament. He was phenomenal, and he's continually growing as a player. Now can count himself truly among the elite. As we see an awesome deep shot.
Evans Holstrom here, looking for options downfield, trying not to be too hasty shooting into the end zone. Looks for a dump back to Thomas, back to Evans. Shot goes up, without, looks like that's a goal.
Lovely grab from Peter Blakely, and that's a familiar Colony connection, as the coaches were talking about. Evans to Blakely, I'm sure they've thrown that pass 1,000 times. So Sydney able to come up with a break to start this game, and that is how you want to kick off round 2.
Certainly, Cole. It will be interesting here to see this league obviously being 6-on-6, working towards a gender equitable model of frisbee, to see if Yui and Carly O'Brien have any interesting defences that they might have up their sleeves.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I certainly noticed in round 1 was that there's a little bit less poaching from the downfield players. There's a bit more space downfield, and you had to be a little bit more accountable for your direct matchup. And so where with a 4-player downfield, or in vertical stack 5-player downfield, often you could see defenders poaching off, sagging off their player and helping elsewhere. With removing one player from the offense, it seems to have kind of reduced that quite a bit.
Absolutely, and I guess there's there's only 3 of each gender on the field, and that leaves a lot of room in this new style to be able to come up with a bunch of different things, experiment, and see how things work with their personnel.
So we see Tulip launch that pull out of bounds into this stiff breeze, and Ryan Davey, the Newcastle import, brings it out to the brick mark to get us underway.
Looks like potentially off camera here was a bit of a side stack. Nearly with the disc now.
Perth seemingly content to just move it back and forth while they find the right option downfield, and they have. Shepherd now.
Back to DeLuca.
Looks like DeLuca's going to play that central reset handler role. She's getting just about every other throw at the moment and finding some nice looks downfield too.
Perth looking fairly comfortable at the moment, happy to just swing it back and forth. And
whoa, Tony looks end zone, but that's a nice block. Looks like we may have a bit of a foul discussion here in the end zone. Frisbee, of course, a fully self-officiated sport. We're assisted here by game advisors who will only get involved if the players request it. But that one has been waved off. So Perth, having put together a very solid-looking O-point, have stumbled literally at the line and given Sydney a chance. So we'll see Tulip take the disc out the front cone of the end zone to get us back underway.
Tulip, obviously a very important member of the Colony team that competed at World Clubs most recently with a silver medal, and it was a joy to watch him compete at the highest level against some really great teams in the world there.
He's just connected a massive upwind flick. Haverfield with the reception, who's then sent it to Andrews, and then we've seen a pick call. Sydney have managed to gain a lot of ground with that throw from Tulip. It was a bit of a speculative huck, but into this kind of wind, playing the percentages, that's how it works. That's a lovely give and go look from Sydney.
On the doorstep now, looks like there might be another call.
So a pick is when a defender is obstructed from defending the player they're trying to defend, when they crash into someone else, and everyone simply resets to the point just before that happened as Tulip looks end zone, and Sydney with 2 breaks in a row.
With a lovely pull-out throw to Rosie Dawson in the end zone there. Rosie Dawson, another player that we're looking to have a great impact for the rest of this league and during this game for the Sydney Suns. An incredibly fast receiver, most recently a member of the World Games team from 2017 that competed in Poland.
Yeah, she is an absolute beast. She's got legs like pistons. They just go and go and go. And she actually played, I think she's moved to Wollongong recently, if I'm not mistaken, and she actually played the national season this year with Wollongong's men's team, Crank, because she's just that good that even the boys can't keep up with her. So awesome to see her on the field, and she is an extremely tough matchup.
Absolutely. I think the Perth girls will be, Perth women, I should say, would be looking to try and shut down that matchup as much as they possibly can for the rest of this game.
So speaking of the women, Caro, you're familiar with a few of the Sydney players in particular because you played with them on the Stingrays, the women's under-24 Australian team. What can you tell us about those players?
Yep. So Rachel Parsons, Eunice Chung, and Deb Lee are looking have three women from Rogue who have played together quite a lot, and I think it would be a shame if they didn't use their connection on field that they have in this Sydney game, and I think that's going to be something that they can look to exploit here.
As Daub jacks it downfield, that is a beautiful throw, absolutely perfectly weighted into that wind. As we see a nice D from Parsons. So Mark Evans now, Sydney back in control of the disc. They've managed to get the disc off Perth in every single defensive point so far. And they're looking like they're starting to get their groove on. Just moving it between the boys at the moment as Henry Thomas shoots deep to Evans. Oh, massive layup bid!
Incredible bid from Nazare, I believe.
Don't know a lot about him as a player, I must admit, but I can say that was an awesome defensive bid to keep the disc out of the reach of Mark Evans. And Daub is going to walk it back up to the front of the end zone to get us back underway. Perth really using their women in that central handler role. I think that's partly to do with the fact that they have such a crew of athletes downfield as well. So looking to hit their boys in the downfield space. But Sydney have managed to get it back again. Blakely with the disc.
Yeah, Cole, I'm really, despite the turns that Perth have had, I'm really liking their fast movement style, as Max referred to in the beginning interview. And hopefully they get another chance at doing that again with more luck this time.
So we see a nice block on that inside break throw that Evans went for, as we see Ellie Murray-Young with another beautiful upwind backhand. And it looks like Perth's going to open their account. Calaviotis.
That's a lovely score from Perth. I'm really liking the way that they're able to integrate all their players, using everyone on the field in a more dynamic role. It doesn't look too much, while we have the same people sort of picking up the disc, it's very dynamic upfield, and I'm really liking that look.
Absolutely. They've got a lot of great continuation looks is what we've seen so far. Perth's cutters really looking to huck as soon as they get the disc, and we've seen Ellie Murray-Young, the one there who, as soon as she received the disc, saw that continuation cut coming and no hesitation in sending that backhand upwind. And that's given Perth now an opportunity with that hold in the upwind, now an opportunity perhaps to break Sydney going back the other way.
Absolutely. We've got Alex Shepherd with the disc here. We'll see if the Perth coaches are looking to continue to play matches as both teams have been doing this game, or potentially look to do some sort of interesting defence here.
We did hear Max say that there'd be a few zone looks thrown out. So Alex Shepherd, or A-Shep as he's known, just come back from the silver medal winning Colony team at the World Ultimate Club Championships.
Charlotte with the disc, happy to survey his options downfield before making a decision.
He never looks rushed, does he?
No, quite calm. Some really big gainers Sydney are getting here, and as Parsons, I believe, launches upfield. And a lovely D from Rebecca Brereton there.
Huge D from Brereton. She's looking just as athletic as she always has, despite short break from Frisbee, as Davey uncorks a long one. It's looking good.
Oh.
Shepherd brings it down, and that's a break to the Perth Power.
Davey, another key handler in this Perth team that is looking to do things like that. Recently, Davey has come back from the World Club Championships, also playing with mixed team Pie Wagon, who seem to have quite a successful campaign as well.
Davey tells me that the player he'd most like to play with is a young John Greenfield. Greenfield being an absolute stalwart of the Australian Frisbee scene in Newcastle, and celebrating his 50th birthday this year, Greenie, and yet still playing in the Open Division at Australian Nationals and competing overseas at the highest level. He's an absolute machine of a man. Treats his body like a temple. Always doing the yoga, eating the right thing.
That's the way to do it. That's the way to stay in the game.
Not sure Ryan Davey will be looking quite as sharp as Greenfield by the time he's 50 years old, but we can only hope.
He's looking pretty good now, though, so hopefully we can hope to see Perth exploiting that a little bit more.
So Perth now have, after a shaky start, managed to consolidate, and they're back on even keel. They are down a break, but with Gann sending up the pull, let's see what they can manufacture with this defensive point.
Gann as well, another one who has recently come back from the World Club Championships, playing with Sydney mixed team Frisky, a key player in that team as well.
So the weather now starting to clear up as Evans shoots a long backhand. Is it going to sit? Is it going to sit?
Oh.
Carmen can't quite make it.
Great run from Carmen there. Fairly well placed throw from Evans, just a little bit too far out of reach.
Yeah, those downfield shots especially, and looks like Carmen, looks like Daub might have set a pivot when she's picked up the disc there, so Carmen asking her to go back and retake her pivot. Big fake from Ellie Murray-Young. Perth really using the width of the field offensively, often sending the disc out to the sidelines and then striking deep. And that one is just too far ahead of Gan, and you can't run it down.
Both teams here looking to maybe feel a bit more for the weather and see the ones going downfield and maybe dropping a little bit far in front of the receiver, but looks like upwind as well, they're struggling as well. So hopefully they can start to connect those away passes a bit more. As I say that, another away pass is launched and unfortunately turned over.
Not sure where that one went out of bounds, but probably a fair way upfield of where the disc's currently lying, you'd think, as Chris Calaviotis. Oh, it looks like we might have a foul on the throw, actually. Disc coming back, and I didn't see what happened there, but we've got players in a tangle. And I think an injury call.
Looks like Shepherd is subbing in for Mazaret here.
So an uncontested foul on that throw, and the players will reset to where they were when the throw went up. Michael Henry Thomas with the disc. One of the exciting things about this Sydney team is that we have the potential for what's known as a honey pass. Send it to your partner. Thomas and Carmen, of course, a partnership, and also Danny Alexander and Mike Neal, who have a young child together.
Blakely with the disc here, surveying his options, and launches another one.
That looks like it might sit, and it's beautiful. Blakely to Evans, a reverse of their previous scoring pass connection. And Sydney again, getting it on the scoreboard. I must say at the moment, Sydney working mostly through their men, where the Perth team much more balanced in terms of the way they're using their personnel across the field, Karen.
Absolutely, I think Perth is doing a great job of using Jerry Daub and Ellie Mariong in particular. As you saw, Jerry was quite deep in that end zone there, but just a sneaky inside throw to Ellie and they were out in the clearing. So I would love to see more use of Sydney's women here, because I believe they're more than capable of being able to make a good impact for their side.
Absolutely, and I think one of the things that you see where these mixed teams are composed of individuals who've come from single gender club connections, they're often probably not looking people off because of their gender, but simply looking for those connections that they're used to. So the Evans and Andrews and Blakeleys, for example, who've played so many years together at Colony, are just so kind of in sync with each other. It'll be interesting to see as this league wears on, if the connections start to open up and they can move through more of their players. As we see a huge pull going up, the wind is starting to die down a bit, and Ryan Davies going to pick up the disc at the sideline.
It does look like the sun is beginning to come out. We'll see if that leads to more away pass connections as Perth move beautifully up the break side here.
Davey, one of my favourite handlers in the game at Australian Nationals this year. I watched a lot of his play with I-beam, and his ability to attack with the disc while keeping his turnover rate exceptionally low is really quite amazing. And he's matched up here against one of Australia's other top handlers, Tulip.
Interesting, Perth using Alex Shepherd as more of a handler role, I've noticed, in round one and in this game, where traditionally in teams like the Colony Worlds team, he was much more of a receiver.
That is a beautifully patient offensive point from Perth. The final strike from Davey to A-Shep, but a lot of their team getting involved there, and just beautiful patience there. They never really looked troubled, always throwing to an open receiver who'd worked hard with their legs to create an opportunity there, Karen.
Absolutely. I think Perth should look to do much more of that, using every single player, continuing to do that for the rest of this game, and I think that'll put them in really good stead.
Yeah, I think it's their patience with the disc is when they look best. When the wind was a bit stronger earlier in the game and they were kind of going for those rushed shots as soon as they saw an opening and the connections weren't that consistent, but now that the conditions have eased up, it's not just that their decision making looks to have improved, and they're really now starting to look quite confident on those. So they've levelled it up again at 3-3. They did, of course, start the game on offense, so down a break in effect. Let's see if Sarah Brereton can coach her sister and the rest of the Perth Power back in front in this match.
Absolutely. Perth have a great coaching duo here in Max Halden and Sarah Brereton, two of the head coaches of the upcoming Under-24s campaign in Germany.
Sarah Brereton, in particular, I've got to say, looks to me like a coaching superstar for Australia's future. I enjoyed following the Stingrays throughout their campaign early in 2018, and her coaching really impressed. You might agree, Carrie, you were on the team.
I would agree. I am very fond of Sarah Brereton as a human and as a coach. As Sydney Parsons with the disc here, looking to attack upfield.
Sydney running a pretty standard vertical stack here at the moment, and lots of players able to get the break side shots open. I think we've got Eunice Chung with the disc as we have a pick downfield. She's marked up by Bella C, recent firetail for Australia. Some of the best women in the country on the field in this game. And great to see them getting involved here as Sydney now keeping three handlers out. A lot of space downfield, and that opens up those shots over the top.
Lovely shape throw from Mark Evans there to the end zone. Blakely.
So Evans and Blakely racking up the stats here.
Seems like a bit of a match made in heaven, actually, for Sydney at the moment.
Blakely really one of the premier players in the country. His ability to just constantly get himself open and constantly create threats that it's really difficult to shut him down. You almost can't stop him from getting the disc. You can just have some influence on where he gets it, but on that occasion, Calaviotis unable to shut him down and opening the end zone for a relatively easy shot from Evans. What do you think Perth can do to start to turn the tide here, Caro? What opportunities do you see for them to get back on top in this match?
I'd really like to see, as Max sort of talked about before the game, maybe a little bit of different pressure on defence, make Sydney think a little bit more. At the moment it looks quite easy for them. The match is just outrunning their players, outcutting their players, but putting on something a bit different might require a bit more problem solving from Sydney there, and I'd really like to see that.
Yeah, nice. I agree. And as we see Perth back on offense, let's see if they can show their patience. That was a nice little poach in the middle there that shut down that downfield pass. Davy's got the big frame of Rob Andrews trying to block him, but still able to get the shot out, and it just hasn't sat even for someone with the speed of Alex Shepherd.
I think sometimes if you've overthrown Alex Shepherd, you may have overthrown it a bit too far. Great look there. Couldn't really see his defender in the frame, so I think it was a great option, but unfortunately couldn't connect on that one.
Right after I've talked him up for being so reliable with the disc even when shooting. So we've got Tulip now marked up by Peter Ely. They were also teammates on the Colony Club Championships campaign.
As well as the 2016 Worlds campaign with the men's Dingoes team.
So Sydney having to work their way upwind here. The wind has died down, but still a bit of a breeze blowing. See Tulip really ripping those flicks to make sure they sit nice and flat.
Some decent pressure here from Perth, making Sydney have to rethink their first option a lot of the time, so that's really great to see.
Yeah, good couple of reset defences there that got Sydney up to a pretty high count. Deb Lee moves the disc. Well, Caro, you asked for something different, and if nothing else, the Perth defence is certainly slowing Sydney down this time as Tulip finally rips one.
And it looks to have worked, Cole.
Yeah, that eventually they've just caused an impatient shot there. That was really good match D from the Perth defence. We saw a lot of the stall counts rising, and eventually Tulip wanting to put the point away, just hasn't found the right angles. So Perth really need a hold here, having started on offence. It's pretty critical to try and take half. Otherwise, the defensive team in effect gets a free break in the point out of half time.
Absolutely, and the pressure is even more there in this league as the shot goes up to... No, it doesn't seem like there's a call. That was just a nice D from Dawson there to Amelia Tony in the end zone. As I was saying, the half time in this league is 7 as the score cap is 13, so getting those points early is even more imminent for these teams.
Absolutely. So Chulett again with the disc. Back in Sydney's hand after a Pete Ely shot to the end zone and Emily Atoni didn't quite come off. Credit the D to Rosie Dawson though. She got up high. And that's a nice look. Gives Chulett power position and he's going to use it. Sends it long. It's curving.
Oh.
And it's caught.
Didn't quite see that 2-on-2 matchup there, but lovely grab from Liam Haverfield. A lot of patience here in the red zone for Sydney. Debley with the disc. Back to Chulett. Oh. And a D from Alex Shepard. Potentially a call. No.
Rob Andrews just helping the disc get back to its
Rightful position on the
rightful
field.
position, coming back in near the front cone. So Perth with it all to do again. Sydney did almost everything they needed to snatch another break there, but they've coughed it up. Oh, good bid from Brereton. Not afraid to get horizontal.
Brereton played an incredible round 1 game after I said earlier had taken a bit of a hiatus, not playing the club season this year after her World Games performance in 2017. So it's great to see her out here again, dominating.
As Chulett sends a hammer over the top. Wide open air there for Haverfield, who launches an inside flick. Is it going to sit? Big contest, and it's brought down. Danny Alexander, one of the premier deep threats in the women's game. And she's very difficult to beat in the air. And she's made that throw look perfect. Brought it down for another Sydney break, and they're up 5-3. Well, if nothing else, at least the weather's warmed up a bit at the start of this game. The players were crowding on the line, trying to keep themselves warm. And we've had a timeout called as Perth looks to reassess their situation and consider how they might get themselves back into this game. They did look a lot better defensively in that last couple of points though, Cara.
Absolutely. As we talked about, their match defence looked like it was putting a lot more pressure on the Sydney offence there. It'd be great to see more of that and also bring back that calm and composure offensive play that they had in some of those points early in that game as well.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that we're seeing here is that defences that aren't a simple match look are a little bit more difficult with just the 6 players. I think that's what we're starting to learn here as the games start to rack up in this 6-on-6 league, and it's just that little bit of additional space opened up by the fact that if you've removed 2 players from the field means that the traditional zone looks that teams are used to aren't as effective, and that the poach looks that teams might have practiced a bit more before don't seem to be as effective.
Absolutely. And I think we've seen in other games in round 1, there have been mismatches to exploit different parts of the field, often having athletic women on big throwing men to create different things downfield. So I would love, as we've mentioned, to see more of that sort of play from Perth here to maybe garner up a couple more points.
Absolutely, and one thing that we said about Perth at the start of this match was that their women are extremely athletic. They've got an absolute set of beasts right across the board just about. And so yeah, possibly one of the things that they could look to do is switch some of their matchups so that they've got women guarding men, which might then leave one of their taller men downfield open to start poaching into some of the longer shots from Sydney. So it'd be interesting to see if they, as you say, come up with any interesting looks that might cause the Sydney Suns to have to think a little bit more, do a little bit more planning. Certainly they need to find something if the game continues in its current course. it's going to head to a pretty solid Sydney victory.
Yeah, the momentum is definitely in Sydney's favour at the moment. So hopefully on this offensive possession, Perth can come up with something.
As Henry Thomas with a big outside in pull. Davey gets it across to Daub. Pretty familiar starting set. As we see an insta block.
Through D and
Immediately
lovely
to the
outside
end
into
zone.
the end zone.
So double happiness there for Henry Thomas. Quick block, immediate sprint to the end zone, and he's wide open on the transition. And Sydney now out to a very comfortable 6-3 lead. Half-time, of course, coming at 7. So if they can take another one, they'll earn themselves a 5-minute break. And Perth really not even giving themselves a chance with that offensive possession to get any flow happening. Just a very quick error early in the point.
Absolutely, and in maybe thinking of a different defensive look, maybe a different offensive structure as well. I'm not sure if they've experimented with more horror looks or sort of something else, but I think maybe the vertical upfield is Sydney starting to catch on, and that might mean that they're getting easy Ds like that. So we'll see what happens here.
So not the best pull we've seen. Henry Thomas with an outside in that only ever did the outside and never did the in. And Alex Gann indicating that the disc went out of play at roughly the halfway line. So we'll see Jerry Daub bring it in.
From the glimpse I saw, it looked like potentially some sort of side stack, and Jerry Daub launches it to the end zone to a streaking offender.
Oh, Calaviotis! That was actually a lovely look from Daub. She didn't overthrow it. She just put it up in the wind and let the wind carry it. And for all money, I thought Calaviotis was going to get that. And he's an incredibly athletic player. And
certainly not a bad option, striking to Calaviotis downfield. Unfortunately, not able to rein it in on that one. But good look there. Sydney looking like they're in some sort of side stack isolation, potentially.
And Evans rips an upwind flick. And big D from Alex Gann. Blakely tells Evans that the throw was good. And we've got another quick overthrow. Ellie Murray-Yong couldn't get the mitts on that one.
I think Perth are right there to try and get the disc moving as quickly as they can before Sydney set, but unfortunately couldn't connect on that one either.
And Henry Thomas just coughs that one straight up. That was like a perfect throw to someone wearing the wrong shirt. As Ellie Murray-Yong gets it to Calaviotis. And Jerry Daub, not her best effort there. Usually a very reliable player. And she's just coughed that one up. Quick bobble. And Sydney back in control of the disc.
Got sort of erratic tensions feeling on field at the moment. I think it would be best for both teams to apply a bit more composure, especially on offense. We want hard on D and sort of calm O here. So I think that's probably what both teams are looking to do for the rest of this point.
Yeah, it's an interesting mental game, Frisbee, where on defense you want to be so intense and so high energy, and then on offense you almost got to be exactly the opposite. You've got to be calm, as we see an absolute monster bomb. And Calaviotis is on the end zone line. Resets to Murray-Yong,
Beautiful.
who puts it easily into the end zone, and that's a score to Alex Gann. Well done, Perth. They're back to 4-6.
I love the composure from Calaviotis there to have a look around on the red zone, not look to shoot immediately, and Ellie Murray-Yong to go back, get the dump, and do a really nice play there. Great defense.
Yes, it's not uncommon for the receiver from a long huck landing right near the end zone to immediately cough the disc up because the blood pressure's a little high and the decision making a little low, but Calaviotis there showing his experience, had it on the end zone line and just kept his vision looking back, searching for an easy dump. Great play from Perth.
Hopefully Perth can do a little bit more of that to try and close this gap before Sydney get their hands on half time.
So Sydney seemingly able to use their deep throwing prowess pretty effectively. They're connecting more often than they're not, and on balance they're just the better team offensively than Perth at the moment. And as we see Julett surveying his options, his near unstoppable backhand around break.
And Hayfield shoots, and a great D from Alex Shepherd there. Oh.
Whoa, a little bobble and a recovery from Tony. So this would make the game a bit more interesting if Perth are able to move it up against the wind here. Pete Ely with the disc to Shepherd. And nicely defended.
Sydney getting a few of those blocks on, especially those inside flicks, I think able to cause confusion upfield with the
Deb Lee, having snatched that cheeky little run-through block, has jogged down to the end zone and scored herself a point to take half-time.
Deb Lee, an incredible aerial contest participant. I have very rarely seen Deb get skied. She's incredible. She is very good at jumping, extremely athletic, works very hard. So great to see her being used out there.
Absolutely. So Perth now down 4-7, and they're going to come out starting the second half on D. So they really do need to work out a way to shut down the potency of this Sydney offense. Sydney, it seems, just not being troubled regularly enough with the disc. They're having a number of clean O points, and it's really up to Perth now to find something defensively that can get the disc off Sydney.
Absolutely. I think it'll be up to Sarah and Max here to concoct some sort of new structure or strategy to be able to really break apart this Sydney team. At the moment, I think Sydney, look, as you mentioned earlier, the men especially looking at their club connections that they've got going. I would really love to see them incorporating more of their incredible female athletes, and you've got Carmen streaking down the field, more of Deb Lee, Eunice, Parsons, those Stingrays girls, women, Danny Alexander of course. So Sydney with a star-studded line of women, it'd be great to see more integration there with the men.
Yeah, definitely. Danny Alexander is one of the most dominant mixed players that I've ever seen. She's always preference mixed over women's when it comes to Australian representation. So she's played with the Mundies and the Crocs a number of times, and she is an absolute force to be reckoned with downfield. She's just almost impossible to stop athletically. She's tall, she's fast, and she lays out big time. So I'd like to see some more of Alexander, especially now that she's got a kid in tow. Always like to see women post-pregnancy come back and continue to rip it up. Particularly the likes of Winky, Sarah Wentworth, who is taking a break for this game. She is still an absolutely incredible player despite having 3 kids, and still one of the most experienced and most effective players in the women's game in Australia. Perth, offensively, I think have got to stick with that patient style. It's when they use the width of the field and give their cutters time to really get open that they look potent.
Absolutely. I think also they should definitely continue to use all their players. They are spacing out the field really well when they're in offensive flow. So continuing to have a mix of women backhandling, women shooting deep, women receiving deep, men receiving deep. It's all looking really good when Perth is on in their offensive flow. So hoping they can garner more of that for the second half.
And it seemed to me like their offense looks best when they kind of in that flow state, as you're saying, Caro. So rather than having a really solid defined stack where only one player cutting at a time, Perth to me look more effective when they are moving around the field in a kind of flow, almost that hexagon style offense that some people sometimes talk about. And so it'll be interesting to see if they can keep that flow going, because that's what to me looks like is allowing them to get their players open and in threatening positions on the field.
Absolutely, and as is the case with many teams, getting that first or second pass is something that's really hurting them at the moment. Sydney are getting a lot of their blocks through those first couple of passes where they're a bit static, not really sure what to do. So having more confidence in those who are picking up the disc and also being more aware of where they are when they're cutting downfield would be really good for that.
Yeah, good point. A lot of their turnovers have come from those first couple of passes. So it'll be interesting. I think that partly comes as well because Sydney's got some really powerful pullers that can get plenty of hang time and give their runners time to get down there. Let's see if Perth can get in flow. But of course, for this first point of the second half, they're coming out on D. They do have the wind at their backs, possibly an opportunity to force a turn and take a break away from Sydney.
And in speaking of coaches, the Sydney side has Yu Eng and Kylie O'Brien as their coaches, both incredibly respected, well-known, highly renowned, have a lot of campaigns under their belt. We've got Yui looking to coach the mixed team, the Barramundis, for the 2020 Worlds campaigns. So I think having that mixed experience is really helping Sydney at the moment.
Good to see Yui gets a nice Australian nickname. Yui. So Sydney on offense. Mark Evans sending the disc out wide to Blakely, who's marked up by Peter Ely.
Evans shoots.
That is a gorgeous shot, but it's Parsons, I think, can't quite hang on to it. That was a nice throw in the upwind.
You don't usually see that very often from Parsons, able to get some crazy grabs in her time that I've seen. So uncharacteristic drop there, but great option from Evans there.
Evans sporting a brace on his left wrist, which I believe he broke one of the bones in his wrist not so far in front of the World Clubs campaign, but fortunately recovered enough to participate and contribute to that silver medal winning performance as A-Shep sends a lovely shot down to Peter Ely.
Side flick. Oh.
Couldn't get the shape required, Ely, on that throw. And the disc just curving further and further away from his intended receiver. I think he might like to have that one back and have another shot at getting an inside-out look.
Absolutely. Could use more of that end zone composure we had from Calviotis and Young and before.
Perhaps he should have maybe looked back downfield a bit. All right, the wind picking up again. And Henry Thomas trying to get a reset.
It's a great dump deep from Ryan Davey there.
Oh, Alex Shepherd reads that dump throw and all the way into the hands. That is a goal for Perth, and what a way to take the first point of the second half. Easy, Callahan.
Starting out with a bang. Unfortunately, there was a miscommunication between Evans and Thomas there on the dump, but A-Shep able to go in and grab that for a score. Incredible.
I'm not even sure how they show up on the stats sheet. Do you credit one to Evans for throwing that?
Yeah, who gets the assist there?
Give them both to A-Shep. That was a beautiful read, and it just always looked like he was going to take that one. As soon as Evans went to send that dump out, Shepherd just knew exactly where it was going to go, positioned his body more effectively, and in the end it looked like a pass to him. That is a beautiful way for Perth to get themselves back into this match and build some momentum here in the second half.
Yep. Alex Shepherd not looking like a bad option for the AUL fantasy teams at the moment with that Callahan. As a member of the AUL teams, you're able to sign up on fantasy, follow your favourite players and rack up their stats and see how many points they're getting.
Mind you, with the conditions as they are, I imagine the negative points for turnovers are killing some teams right now.
Absolutely.
The interesting thing about the conditions as well, though, if the weather continued to get chaotic, that could spell an opportunity for Perth to get themselves back into this game, because the number of errors tends to rise with the amount of rain and wind that's around. Maybe that'll help contribute to them getting the disc off this powerful Sydney unit.
For sure, Colin. I think that Callahan should be a morale booster for Perth here, so hopefully they can get a block.
So Rob Andrews hasn't had a huge impact on this game thus far. Now starting to get himself involved. Chulett, of course, getting a lot of disc touches as he uncorks An absolutely perfect shot to the end zone.
Incredible shot to an always great option, Rosie Dawson in the end zone there.
Yeah, Rosie is extremely difficult to cover. She's just got legs that never, ever, ever stop, and a really strong understanding of how to create multiple threats downfield. And she just made space there that made the shot from Hewlett really a pretty easy one, and made no mistake with the delivery. So Sydney managing to get the wheels back on after a shaky opening point, and they've now got their defensive unit back out there. Let's see what they can come up with. Be interesting to see if Perth can get the disc moving quickly, like you said, Caro, and get into that flow that makes their offense look so good before Sydney can get their defensive structures set up.
Absolutely. So we've got Evans with the pull here. I think that side stack that Perth were sort of fiddling with there seemed to work really well to be able to get that first pass off, and potentially, depending on where the middle of the field is according to the camera, might be doing that now. Directly with the disc.
So Shepherd and Davey moving around. Perth also needs those continuation cutters to work. When DeLuca got the disc there was just nothing on downfield for her to look at. And as a result, they've ended up forcing something that probably didn't really need to go.
Absolutely. It seemed to look quite static there when the handlers would look up. There was not much developing. And as you said, Cole, Davey potentially having to force that shot to make something happen.
And that is one of the things that comes from this 6-on-6 league, is when you don't have that extra player downfield, it's really incumbent on the cutters to work the entire time. So potentially some of the fitter players will come into this as Henry Thomas shoots it up, but Rebecca Brereton all over it, and Perth getting the disc back. Oh, bullet from Shepherd to Peely. Could not bring that in. No surprise, that disc was going about 100 kilometres an hour as Evans shoots deep to Blakely. Is he going to make it? He is!
Doesn't even need a layout.
So the shot was open from Shepherd to Ely, but possibly he didn't need to throw it quite that hard, and Ely could not bring it in. And Sydney punishing the mistake there. Evans with a hard flat flick into the wind, and it looked like it might just start curling away from Blakely, but managed to sit it flat enough for him to run onto it.
Yeah, Sydney here looking like they're staying with match defence against Perth. It seems to be working. Up in that point we saw that it looked quite stifling, the offence for Perth there. It was really hard for them to move and get gains upfield, so that's a testament to Sydney's match defence. Very athletic, great fundamentals.
So Perth now really with it all to do, down 5-9, and it's a game to 13, so they're slowly running out of time. As Yui,
in his oversized jacket, watching these incredible athletes run their hearts out on the field.
Well, it is freezing here today, so I don't blame him. I'm wearing about 37 layers myself. All right, Rob Andrews, who typically throws absolutely uncatchable outside-in pulls that reach altitudes I could never even dream of. And it's rolled out the sideline, and Shepherd brings it back into Bella C.
We've got Bella C back handling here, which is something we haven't seen a lot of. Again, with an uncharacteristic drop again.
Yeah, Alex Gann is one of my favourite players, and that was a pretty disappointing drop from him because the disc came in on a platter and he just coughed it up. Rosie Dawson here takes a reset to Hewlett, and Sydney now with an opportunity to almost put this beyond reach, and that is a beautiful little shot over the top. And Beck Carmen, I believe, with the goal. Sydney now up 10-5 over Perth, and potentially going to take a really strong runaway victory here.
Yeah, I think Perth at the moment looks like they're a bit in their heads. I think they need to sort of look to each other, support each other a bit more, and find satisfaction in getting those really nice completed throws. They have good handler movement at the moment, and just looking to each other to be a bit more up and about, because that's the only way I think they're going to be able to bridge this gap at the moment.
Yeah, so what do you reckon you do when your team gets, as you say, they're kind of in their heads? It's like they start to look a bit tense and every throw looks a bit tense. Like, what can a team do to break themselves out of that mindset and find something new? How do you reset a team that's really backs up against the wall?
I think something that I like to do when I'm a bit down is to sort of look to, as we've talked about over and over again, that Perth looks great when they're in flow and when they're getting those small passes and getting all those connections together. So potentially pulling it back, being a bit more conservative with their options, making sure they're just getting 100% passes so they can sort of develop those connections again.
Yeah.
Looks like they might be doing a side stack here, so hopefully they can get some of that.
Davey indicating that the disc went out of play a few metres further downfield as he brings it in. Oh, nice little backhand break throw. And Shepherd puts one over the top of the stack. Oh, Brereton! I think she just had a slight misread there. She's certainly tall and she's certainly fast. That looked a catchable throw, and I think she just didn't quite get a read on the disc. Maybe it gusted at the last minute. It missed her hands by just a centimetre or two.
It's good vision by Shepherd there, seeing her as an option. I think it was great, but unfortunately off the hands.
Tulip throwing a hammer in this wind is brave, but he is, of course, one of the best throwers in the country, so if anyone can do it, he can. And we've got lovely reset defence there from Pete Ely. Shut down the Tulip option and forced a throw away. So Perth gets it back.
Davey been a really strong player in this game. Well needed for Perth, a really solid handler. As Burden shoots the end zone to a streaking Ely.
Beautiful throw! That was an absolutely perfectly executed throw. Just sat out in the wind, curved back in, and met the receiver exactly where he wanted it. That was a perfect shot from Rebecca Brereton.
That's it. Things like that, support, getting around those type of throws, lovely outside in shape. Those are the type of things Perth needs now to sort of garner up their spirits and really get back into this game.
Absolutely. We're supposed to be completely impartial here in the commentary booth, but let's face it, I like close games, so
Absolutely.
I'd be happy for Perth to steal a point or two here, much as I love the Sydney team.
I think going for the underdog is an Australian sort of pastime, and I believe that right now Perth are the underdogs. Sydney playing tremendously though, we will say.
All right, so Perth down 6-10. The wind at the backs of the Sydney players. And we've sort of been asking for it the whole time, haven't we? What can they do defensively beyond just that straight match defence that's going to peel the disc out of the hands of the Sydney players? Let's see if Sarah Brereton and Max Halden have got anything to implement. As we see Alex Gann jack that pull downfield. And it's a brick. Henry Thomas just conferring with the game advisor that it did in fact land out of play. Looked from here like it was on the line, so I would say yes. It does give you a sense of the window when you've got powerful pullers who are struggling to get the disc past the brick mark.
Absolutely. And Sydney going with their split stack again, having two handlers back and two stacks on the side with two people each. Seems to be working quite effectively for them at the moment.
Does make a lot of space on the field, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So Henry Thomas has had a lot of the disc as he sends a cheeky blade over the top to Evans. And Evans going to have a look to the end zone.
Oh.
And it just didn't sit up that time.
Trying to get that blade continuation going, but unfortunately wasn't quite there for that one.
Yeah, the throw just didn't sit up.
No.
I think he saw Henry Thomas's blade and thought, I want to throw one of them too. But didn't give his receiver enough time to get to the drop zone.
Carmen also quite a fast receiver, so that does say something about that throw. Ooh.
And Evans has just earned the biscuits back and scores the goal. That was a great defensive effort. I think he wanted to make amends for the slightly wayward throw, and he's managed to get himself up and read that Jerry Daub cross-field flick, forces a D and scores the goal.
Sydney have been doing a great job of exploiting the transition time between turns. So immediately after the Perth turnover, Sydney are there ready to go, and their offense has already started before the Perth players are often aware of where their players are. So I think Perth doing that to Sydney would sort of help with their offensive movement at the moment as well.
Yeah, again, that's the psychology of Frisbee being an offensive-defensive game, and the necessity to flip between those two psychologies. And it's amazing how many teams, even at quite a high level, can kind of have that switch off between the offense and defensive mindsets. And at the moment, Sydney not making that mistake. As you say, Caro, the moment there's a turnover, they're just immediately switched on, especially when they're going on to the offense. And they've managed to punish Perth really quickly with a number of their turns. So you'd think that'd be a lesson that Perth might take away from this match, as Rob Andrews sends his AUL pull upfield. And yeah, this win really challenging the players. If Rob Andrews can't throw it to the other end zone, it must be blowing a gale. So Beck Burton having a lot of influence on this game now. She finds Pete Ely, who shoots, and that's going to sit over the top.
I think again, Perth at the moment are looking for some really, really great options to their players in a lot of space, but unfortunately, whether it's the weather or their mindset at the moment, they're not able to complete those passes at the moment.
Yeah, and it's what we're seeing is how the shape of the disc can have such an effect in this win. That was a wide open shot that Ely took there. Emily Atoni had made great space, and she was open when he shot it out there, but just showing a little bit too much of the deck of the disc to the wind, and the wind just carried it up and over, and it's essentially that seventh defender when it's blowing this hard. And that's given Sydney another chance. Though they, of course, are... Oh my goodness! Ely over the top! He's made amends, and that's 2 Callahans in a single game from Perth. Unbelievable!
Incredible scenes here from Brassy Senior. Perth with 2 Callahans in one game against Sydney. Very impressive.
Almost exactly the same situation. The downfield defenders have completely shut down the options because the wind blowing as it is, just take away the unders, and that's pretty much it. And then Sydney going with a backhand around, kind of a blade reset, and just read better by the Perth defender. 2 Callahans, unbelievable.
As we said after the last Callahan, hopefully this is what Perth can use to fuel them for the rest of the points. So let's see it here from Perth. We want some hard defense no matter what structure they use.
Absolutely. They've still an opportunity to claw themselves back here. Sydney obviously just a couple of points away from victory, but with the wind like this, anything can happen. Let's see if Ryan Davey can give them some good field position here and punt this disc up as far as he can. You can hear the whistles of the game advisors, who are just helping the players get themselves set within the allotted time limits. And Davey with the pull. You can see that wind, the pull's coming backwards as Henry Thomas picks up. And we've got a pick called downfield. So Sydney now just collapsed back to a vert stack. Caro, what do you reckon their strategy is here?
I think as a team sometimes it's just good to... and a drop there from Eunice Chung with a bit of a bobble in the wind. I think it's good to just mix up different structures to keep the other team on their feet. So I think that's what Sydney's doing there.
Oh, Ellie Murray-Young! Oh, shit! Alex Gann with an absolutely huge bid. Ellie Murray-Young wanted to end the point early, sent that flick up wind. Powerful throw, I've got to say. Possibly not the best option, but Alex Gann almost able to bring it in, and Eunice Chung now with an opportunity to make amends for an earlier drop. As Henry Thomas, with the wind at his back, sends a deep shot down. Mark Evans doesn't look backfield. No, sir. There we go. Good patience, and looks like Eunice is going to be wide open. Chung with the score. Sydney now 1 point away from victory. Can Perth dig up something to claw their way back into this match? It would be a miracle from here. They need to score 6 points in a row to win this game.
It's been done before, Cole.
Not by any of the teams that I've played on. But if nothing else, I think they want to use this match to continue to tune their both offense and defense. There's still a long way to go in this league, and obviously they want to put themselves in a position where they're at least fighting for a chance to make the final. Starting with 2 losses won't be a good start, but there's still plenty of matches to play, plenty of ultimate to come, and still an opportunity to learn from this game.
Absolutely, and as has been stated, the Sydney team have played a lot more together in general, and the Perth team is still a lot more new, a lot more of individuals playing together for the first time. So, absolutely, Perth will have many more opportunities to play together as a team and work out those connections.
As we see DeLuca. Oh, nice bid there from Tulip.
Ely really making a mark on this game, tearing up the downfield at the moment for Perth.
He's incredibly fit. Oh, as we see a lovely D from Deb Lee, just streaked across, read the throw coming out of the hand, and this could be it. If Sydney can force this upwind, Haberfield with the disc. Potential to finish the game right here and now.
Charlotte doesn't like what he sees upfield, jumps back to Haberfield.
Rob Andrews jacks it. It's a well-placed shot, and it's just over the top of Deb Lee.
Good pressure there from DeLuca to make Deb jump early, potentially misreading that, or the wind going a bit above where her hand was able to reach.
That was very close to the end of that game. Not a bad shot from Andrews, particularly when you've got a receiver like Deb Lee down there. She, as you said earlier in the coverage, Caro, she's a phenomenal receiver. And against this wind, you've got to take your shots when the opportunities are there. So not a bad shot from Andrews and a good effort from Lee downfield, but Perth get the disc back.
Like you said earlier, Cole, it looks like the continuation is something that Perth is struggling with and has been struggling with for this game. It will be one upfield pass, a bit of handle movement, and it's really hard to connect another one downfield.
Right as we say that, Davies managed to get a power position look, and he's gone end zone, and that's a score. Davey to Ely. That was a lovely move from Brereton to open Davey up. That was a nicely placed throw, especially throwing downwind. You can often overthrow those away passes. And gave Davey the power position look, which he used to shoot crossfield to Ely, and Perth live to fight another day. It's 8-12.
Absolutely, I think continuation is the name of this game, as we just saw now. So Perth doing more of that, maybe able to bridge this gap.
So assuming the Sydney are able to close this out now, it is match point. What do you think's coming up next for the Sydney team? Where do you think their opportunities lie to develop as a team?
I think obviously the Sydney team has a lot of great players, and as we said, there's a bunch of different connections there, and we'd like to keep emphasising that this is a new, incredible format with a lot of opportunities to do different things. So I think we'd love to see Sydney, as they play more games, incorporate more of those cross-gender connections and to really fine-tune those.
As you say that, Henry Thomas to Eunice Chum. You're getting what you asked for. You can see that quick movement opens up downfield spaces so quickly. Oh, elevator push pass from Evans. That is cheeky, and we look end zone, and it's going to sail over the top of everybody. Parsons getting horizontal to try and end this game. But the Henry Thomas pass, just a little too much wind underneath it after that cheeky push pass from Mark Evans.
That's what we like, and we're pushing new bounds. We were happy to see that people doing different and new things, so I'm all about that.
I promise I will never throw a push pass in a game. So Alex Gann with the backhand reset to Bella C. And Bella just showing a bit too much of the deck of the disc to the wind there. And Sydney now, you would think, with a real opportunity to close this out. Evans looks end zone, hits Blakely. That is the game. Well done, Sydney Suns. That's a 13-8 victory over the Perth Power. They chalk up their first win in the new Australian Ultimate League. And Perth still looking to chalk up their first win. An exciting matchup, Caro. Probably the result we expected with the Sydney taking the victory. What are your thoughts after that game?
Yeah, I think, as we said, there's a lot of good things that Perth have there and can hopefully develop as they play more games in this league. But Sydney, very strong there. A lot of great personnel, a lot of skills there, and I think having those skills was really useful in the wind, despite those two cheeky Callahans that we saw.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the difference in this game was the throwing power upwind, basically, where when Sydney got the disc from Perth and were heading upwind, they were able to convert some of those deep shots going upwind with the likes of Mark Evans and Henry Thomas and Tom Chulett. That sort of throwing power going upwind really opened up opportunities. Perth didn't have quite the same amount of throwing power, and while they took those shots when they were available, they just weren't able to convert them as often, and that was enough to give Sydney the win.
Absolutely. So we've got, hopefully Perth I think at the moment is playing some really good mixed ultimate, using all their teams. So I think using that in their next matchup against the Brisbane Breakers will put them in really good stead, potentially to get their first win on the board.
Yeah, Brisbane have been a phenomenal team, powered by John McLaughlin and Kat Smith from behind the disc. Those two are a formidable pair, and it will be interesting to see that matchup. And we're going to see Sydney up next against the Adelaide Dragons, who are also seeking their first win. Thanks for joining us here for the first game of round 2 in the Australian Ultimate League.
The Australian Ultimate League is only possible thanks to the generous support of our major partners. Bendigo Private Banking Services. Visit their website, bendigoprivate.com.au, to help you manage all your personal or business banking needs. Discraft. For leaders in flying discs for over 25 years, their Ultrastar is the preferred disc of all World Championship events and the Australian Ultimate League. And Zone Ultimate Custom Sports Apparel. Check out their new range of custom warm-up jackets and pants at zoneultimate.com.